So let's go back to last session before we start this session's learning question, and think about the question we left with. And you were asked to put these sentence parts together to make them correct. Now, the first thing we can do is we can find the beginning of these sentences quite easily, because I'm looking for a capital letter. So I know that the boy said, the Boy Scout said, and the old lady said are going to be the three sentence openers. I can look at my endings because they're going to end with a full stop. Because you can have fireworks, because you can forget being old and remember, and because you can play games in the dark. Now, what I need to think about here is who was talking about what. So the boy, for example, I know, the boy was talking about the fireworks. The Boy Scout, well, the Boy Scout was talking about playing games. He was talking about that game where we're running around. And the old lady, she was talking about, she could forget being old and remember stuff that happened. So we can see those two parts to each sentence now. So now what I'm going to think about is what was the title of each chapter. Dark is kind, dark is fun, dark is exciting. So we have the boy. Well, the boy said, dark is exciting because you can have fireworks. The old lady said, dark is kind because you can forget being old and remember. And the Boy Scout said, dark is fun because you can play games in the dark. And here you can see those three sentences put together. How do you get on with that? Now let's move on to today's session. And in this session, we're going to be trying to answer the question of how can I answer comprehension questions in full. And once again, in order to do this, we're going to be looking at some more of our Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark book. And we're going to be recalling key information just to show that we really understand what's going on in the story so far. We're then going to be looking at an extract, one of those short sections of the story, and we're going to use this to help answer comprehension questions correctly. So we're going to have a range of different questions. We're only going to focus on a small section of the story rather than the whole chapter this time. And finally, how we're going to do this? Well, to answer comprehension questions in full, it means we're going to be writing in full sentences. So we're not just going to be using one word or a short phrase. We're going to actually be putting this in our own words as a full sentence. So let's get started. So remembering our plenary question from yesterday and what we've read so far, let's think about these questions that we can ask, and we can share these with our partners. So we've got, why did the boy think dark was exciting? Can you remember what it was that the boy was talking about? Why did the old lady think dark was kind? What was her reasoning behind it? And then finally, why did the Boy Scout think dark was fun? So pause the video for a few moments, have a little think about those three questions, try and remind yourself of what's happened so far in our story, The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark, and come and join me when you're ready to continue with this session. So now join me as we read Chapter 4, Dark is Necessary. Grab yourself your PDF of this chapter so you can read along if you want. But before we do start, I want you just to think about that title, Dark is Necessary. Why do you think the dark might be necessary? Have a little think before we start reading this chapter. Plop asked, "What's next?" a great many times during that night. He sat just outside the nest hole making loud snoring noises. He was not asleep, just hungry. Owls always snore when they're hungry. "Oh, Plop, I shall be glad when you can hunt for yourself," said Mrs. Barn Owl wearily, when Plop had gulped down his 8th dinner. "What's next?" asked Plop. "Nothing," said his mother. "You can't possibly have room for anything else." "I have," said Plop. "My mouse place is full up, but my grasshopper place isn't." "That's just too bad," said Mrs. Barn Owl, stretching and settling herself down to roost. Mr. Barn Owl swooped in, clapping his wings. He dropped something at Plop's feet. Plop swallowed it in one gulp. It was deliciously slippery. "That was nice. What was it?" he said. "A fish," said his father. "I like fish," said Plop. "What's next?" "Bed," said Mr. Barn Owl. He kissed his wife good night, or good day, I suppose it was, and settled himself to roost. Plop made a few hopeful snoring noises, but it was clear that the feast was over. He wobbled into the nest hole, and was soon fast asleep himself. It was well into the afternoon when he woke up. He came out onto the landing branch and looked around. His parents were still drawn up as carvings, but the squirrels from downstairs were chasing each other up and down the trunk, their tails flying behind them. Plop watched them for a bit. One of them scuttled along a branch just below Plop's and then stopped abruptly and began to wash his face. He did not know that what Plop was there. After all, owls are supposed to be asleep during the daytime. Plop could not resist it. He bent down through the leaves and let out his very loudest "Eek!" The squirrel jumped into the air like a jack-in-the-box, his ears a-quivering, his eyes like marbles. He flashed down the trunk and vanished into his hole. Plop jumped up and down with delight. But of course he'd done it again. He'd woken his mother. "Plop." "Yes, Mummy." "Go and find out some more about the dark, please, dear." "Now?" said Plop. "Now," said his mother. "Go and ask that little girl what she thinks about it." "What little girl?" "That little girl sitting down there, the one with the ponytail." "Little girls don't have tails." "This one does. Go on now or you'll miss her." So Plop shut his eyes, took a deep breath, and fell off the branch. His landing was a little bit better than usual. He bounced 3 times and rolled gently towards the little girl's feet. "Oh, a woolly ball!" cried the little girl. "Actually, I'm a barn owl," said the woolly ball. "An owl? Are you sure?" she said, putting out a grubby finger and prodding Plop's round, fluffy tummy. "Quite sure," said Plop, backing away and drawing himself up tall. "Well, there's no need to be huffy," said the little girl. "You bounced. You must expect to be mistaken for a ball if you will go bouncing around the place. I've never met an owl before. Do you say to-wit-to-woo?" "No," said Plop. "That's tawny owls." "Oh, you can't be a proper owl then," said the little girl. "Proper owls say to-wit-to-woo." "I am a proper owl," said Plop, getting very cross. "I'm a barn owl, and barn owls go eek like that." "Oh, don't do that," said the little girl, putting her hands over her ears. "Well, you shouldn't have made me cross," said Plop. "Anyway, you can't be a proper girl." "What did you say?" said the little girl, taking her hands off her ears. "I said you're not a proper girl. Girls don't have tails. Squirrels have tails. Rabbits have tails. Mice—" "This is a ponytail," said the little girl. "It's the longest one in class," she added proudly. "But why do you want to look like a pony?" asked Plop. Because it's the fashion," said the little girl. "Don't you know anything?" "Not much," agreed Plop. "Mummy says that is why I'm afraid of the dark, because I don't know anything about it." "Do you like the dark?" The little girl looked at Plop in surprise. "Of course I do," she said. "There has to be dark. Dark is necessary." "Dark is what? Necessary. We need it. We can't do without it." "I could do without it," said Plop. "I could do without it very nicely." "Father Christmas wouldn't come," said the little girl. "You'll have an empty stocking on Christmas Day." "I don't wear stockings," said Plop. "And who is Father Christmas?" "Well, Father Christmas is a fat, jolly old man with a white beard, and he wears a red suit with matching hat and black boots." "Is that the fashion?" asked Plop. "No," said the little girl. "It's just what he always wears in pictures of him. Well, I don't know how anybody knows, because nobody has ever seen him." "What?" said Plop. "Well, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Father Christmas only comes in the dark. He comes in the middle of the night, riding through the sky on a sledge pulled by reindeer." "Deer?" asked Plop. "In the sky?" "Magic, dear," said the little girl. "Everything about Father Christmas is magic. Otherwise he couldn't possibly get round to all the children in the world in one night, or have enough toys for them all in his sack." "You didn't tell me about his sack." "He has a sack full of toys, and he puts them in the children's stockings." "In their stockings?" said Plop. "With their feet in them? There can't be much room." "No, silly. We hang empty stockings at the end of our beds for him to fill. I usually borrow one of Mummy's, but last year I hung up my tights." "And did he fill them?" breathed Pop. "No, only one leg, but he did put a sugar mouse in the other one." "I'd rather have a real mouse," said Plop. "So would I, really," said the little girl. "I wanted a white mouse, but Mummy says that if a mouse comes into the house, she will leave. And I suppose Father Christmas didn't want me to be an orphan." Plop was thinking. "I don't think owls have Father Christmas, not barn owls anyway, and I haven't got a stocking to hang up." "Ah, what a shame," said the little girl. "Everybody should have Father Christmas. It's so exciting waking up in the morning and feeling all the bumps in your stocking and trying to guess what's in it." "Oh, stop it," wailed Plop. "I wish he would come to me." "Shut your eyes," the little girl said. "Go on, shut them, and you may get a surprise." Plop shut his eyes tight and waited. The little girl quickly pulled off her Wellington and took off her sock. She was wearing 2 pairs because the boots were a bit too big for her. "Open your eyes," she said to Plop, holding up the sock while she stood on one leg and wriggled her foot back into her Wellington. Plop opened his eyes and then shut them again because he couldn't believe what he saw. "Don't you want it?" said the little girl. "I know it's a bit holy, but I don't expect Father Christmas will mind." "Oh, thank you," said Plop, taking it with his beak and then holding it in his foot. "Thank you very much. I'll go and hang it up at once." "Not yet," laughed the little girl. "You'll have to wait until Christmas Eve. Well, I must go now. It must be nearly tea time. Goodbye. I do hope Father Christmas will come to you." "Goodbye," said Plop, bobbing his funny little bow. "You are very kind. You're a proper girl. And you have a very nice eek," said the little girl. "I'm going to practice it to make my brothers jump." "Eek!" She ran off, and Plop could hear her eeking right across the field. Plop picked up the sock in his beak and flew up to the landing branch. "Well," said his mother. "That little girl says," he began with his mouth full of sock. He put it down and tried again. "The little girl says dark is necessary because of Father Christmas coming," he said. "And what do you think, Plop?" "I still don't like it at all. But I'm going to hang this sock up on Christmas Eve." And Plop took his sock and put it away very carefully in the corner of the nest hole, ready for Christmas. Dark is fascinating. What do you think might be fascinating about the dark? Let's read chapter 5. Plop, having slept nearly all day, was very lively that evening, very lively and very hungry. He kept wobbling along the branch to where his father was roosting to see if, by chance, he were awake and ready to go hunting. Mr. Barn Owl was drawn up tall and still. He seemed hardly to be breathing. Plop stretched up on tiptoe and tried to see into his father's face. What a strong curved beak he had! "Daddy, are you awake?" he said loudly. "I'm hungry." Mr. Barn Owl did not open his eyes, but the beak moved. "Go away," it said. "I'm asleep." Plop went away obediently, and then realized something, and went back again. "Daddy, you can't be asleep. You spoke. I heard you." "You must have imagined it," said his father, still not opening his eyes. "You spoke," said Plop. "You're awake, so you can go hunting." He butted his father's tummy with his head. "Come on, it's getting up time." Mr. Barn Owl sighed and stretched. All right, you horrible owlet. What time is it?" He looked up at the sky. "Suffering bat, it isn't even dark yet. I could have had another half an hour." He glared at Plop. "Dash it, I'm going to have another half an hour. I will not be bullied by an addled little day bird. Go away. You may wake me when it is dark and not before. Do you understand?" He suddenly leaned forward until his huge beak was level with Plop's own little carpet tack. Plop could see 2 of himself reflected in his father's eyes. Yes, Daddy," he said, backing away hurriedly. "Good," said his father, drawing himself up to sleep again. "Good day." Plop went back to the nest hole to complain to his mother. A sleepy Mrs. Barn Owl listened sympathetically. "Well, dear, I should go and find out some more about the world if I were you," she said. "Look, there's a young lady down there. Why don't you go and talk to her?" Plop peered down through the leaves. Standing a little way from the tree was someone wearing shiny black boots, a bright red fur coat with a matching hat, and what looked like a white beard. "That's not a young lady," shrieked Plop. "That's Father Christmas!" And he fell off his branch in such a hurry that he forgot either to shut his eyes or take a deep breath. He landed quite well considering, but lost his balance at the last moment and toppled forward onto his face. A gentle hand picked him up and set him right way up again. "Oh, you poor darling," said a sweet young voice. "Are you all right?" Plop looked up quickly. "That voice doesn't sound right." It wasn't a white beard. It was long, blonde hair. "You're not Father Christmas at all," he said crossly, "and I came down specially." "I'm terribly sorry," said the young lady. "And I'm not a darling. I'm a barn owl." "I tell you what," the Father Christmas lady said. "May I draw a picture of you in my nature sketchbook? I haven't got a barn owl in it." "Me?" said Plop. "You mean really me?" "Yes, please. Perhaps you could pose on that low branch for me." Plop fluttered up to the branch and stood stiffly to attention. The Father Christmas lady sat on a log and began to draw. "I always carry my sketchbook about with me in case I see something interesting," she said. The interesting barn owl drew himself up proudly like a soldier in a sentry box. But not for long. The young lady looked up from her drawing to find that her barn owl had completely disappeared. "Can I see?" said a small voice down by her boot. Plop was jiggling up and down trying to see what was on the pad. "There's not much to see yet," she said. "All right, you can look." Plop looked. "I'm not bold like that," he said indignantly. "I haven't had time to get you properly dressed," said the young lady. "And you've only given me one leg. I'm afraid a bold one-legged barn owl is all that there's going to be unless you keep still." Plop really tried very hard after that, and he only got down 3 or 4 times to see how she was getting on. He could hardly believe his eyes when it was finished. "Is that really me?" he said. "I look just like Daddy. Well, almost." "Yes, that's really you," she said. "I keep one end of the book for animals and birds that come out in the daytime, and the other end for the night creatures. I've put you with them, of course." "Oh," said Plop. Of course. All the most interesting ones are your end," the young lady went on. "I think dark is fascinating." Tell me about it," said Plop. But it was too late now to tell her that she had got him at the wrong end of the book. "Hop up then," said the young lady, holding out a finger and taking Plop on her lap, "and I'll show you what good company you're in. Look, here are some badgers." Plop looked at the big black and white animals with stripes down their noses. "Funny faces they've got." "That's so they don't bump into each other in the dark," explained the young lady. "They can't see very well." She turned over the page. Now I think these are the most fascinating night creatures of all. Bats." "You've got it the wrong way up," said Plop. The Father Christmas lady laughed. "No, I haven't. That's how bats like to be when they're not fluttering about, hanging upside down by their feet." "Go on," said Plop. "Yes, really. And do you know, if you were a baby bat, your mother would take you with her wherever she went, clinging to her fur. You get lots of rides." "Oh, I'd like that," Plop said. "Yes, but when you got too big to be carried, do you know what your mother would do? She'd hang you up before she went out." "Hang me up?" said Plop. "Upside down?" "That's right. Now let's see what else we can find." She turned a few pages. "Yes, here we are." Oh, Plop was not with her. He was rocking backwards and forwards on the low branch like one of those little wobbly men that you push. Every now and then he went a bit too far and had to waggle his wings to keep his balance. "What are you doing?" asked the young lady. "I'm trying to be a bat," said Plop. "But what I don't understand is how they begin. I can't get upside down." "Perhaps it'd be easier to be a hedgehog," said the young lady. "When they're frightened they roll themselves into a ball. Look, here's a picture of one." Plop hopped back onto her knee and inspected the hedgehog. "His feathers could do with a bit of fluffing up," she said. "Those aren't feathers, they're prickles. Very useful they are too. A hedgehog can jump off quite a high fence without hurting himself because he makes himself into a prickly ball and just bounces." "Very useful," said Plop. "I wish I had prickles." He jumped off her lap and tried to roll himself into a ball. It was very difficult. "I don't seem to have enough bends," he said. Suddenly he stopped rolling about and stayed still, listening. Then he rushed back to the young lady's lap and tried to bury himself in her coat. "What's the matter?" she said. "There's a funny noise," he said, "over there." The young lady listened. There was a busy rustling sound coming from the dry leaves under the big tree. "Why, I do believe it's a hedgehog," she said. "Yes, here he is, look." Plop peeped cautiously over the edge of her lap. A tiny pointed snout pushed its way through the leaves, and then a small round creature scuttled across the ground in front of him. "They never bother to move about quietly," the young lady whispered, "because they know nobody would want to eat anything so prickly." "Is he sure?" said Plop. "I'm so hungry I could eat anything." The hedgehog stopped dead and rolled himself into a tight ball. "He must have heard you," the young lady said reproachfully. "What a thing to say!" "Well, it's true," Plop said. "I'm starving." "Oh, of course. You'll be going hunting with your parents now that it's getting dark, won't you? I was forgetting you're a night bird." The night bird looked down at his toes. "Well, I won't keep you," she went on, "except would you mind doing something for me before you go?" "I would like to hear you screech." Plop didn't mind at all. He stuck out his chest and gave her the most enormous eek he could possibly manage. "Gorgeous," said the young lady. Plop bobbed his funny little bow. Then he took off and circled round, eeking for all he was worth. The young lady waved, and then with one final eek of farewell, Plop flew up to the landing branch. Well, said his mother, the Father Christmas lady, you were right, it was a lady, says dark is fascinating. And what do you think, Plop? I still do not like it at all. But what do you think? The lady drew a picture of me. Well, that's very special, isn't it? Nobody's ever put me in a picture. And she says my screech is gorgeous. She does she? I wondered what all that noise was about. Where's Daddy? Out hunting. Oh, jolly good. I could eat a hedgehog. I wouldn't recommend it, said his mother. So what did we find out from these chapters? Well, in this session, we're going to be answering comprehension questions about these two chapters we've just looked at. Dark is necessary and dark is fascinating. And we're going to be focusing on answering the questions in full sentences. Now, learning how to write in full sentences is an important skill. It makes our answers clearer and easier to understand, and we use full sentences for detail and accuracy. So let's have a quick look at a question. What did the little girl think Plop was when he first landed? Now, how would you answer this question as a full sentence? Pause the video and just think about how you would answer this one. So this is my version. So the question was, what did the little girl think Plop was when he first landed? And my answer is, the little girl thought Plop was a woolly ball when he first landed. Would your answer something like this? Do you notice anything similar or the same about these two sentences, the green sentence and the purple sentence? Do you notice anything that's changed? What did the little girl think Plop was when he first landed? The little girl thought Plop was a woolly ball when he first landed. Let's look at this answer in a little bit more detail. Now, I've used my colours to highlight some of the information that I've used. So how I've used the key information from a question to go into the answer. So if we look at the what, the yellow, we can see the what is a woolly ball. We can see the who is the little girl. We can see that we've got our blue part for the plop. We've got our think and thought together, and then when he first landed. So we can see that we've got loads of ideas that are exactly the same. But the order of the sentence has changed. So we've got the answer to the what question, which in this case is a woolly ball, and we've changed the tense because we've already know this now. So the little girl think, well, the little girl thought, because now we're talking in past tense. So in this case, we've got the what did the little girl think Plop was when he landed? Well, the little girl thought Plop was a woolly ball when he first landed. So we can use lots of the information from the question to make sure we're answering in enough detail. So let's have a look at another question. Why did the little girl think Plop wasn't a proper owl? Now once again, pause the video and try and answer this question as a full sentence before we have a look at my version. And here's my answer. So why did the little girl think Plop wasn't a proper owl? Because he didn't say to-wit-woo. Now we can see our little owl on the screen. He's not happy with that answer. And the reason is because it hasn't been written in a full sentence. So how can I make this clearer and more accurate? How can I make my because he didn't say to-wit-woo a full answer? Let's have a look. Well, here I've changed it to the little girl thought Plop wasn't a proper owl because he didn't say to-wit-woo. So can you see that I've used each bit of the key information from the question in this answer now? So I've been able to build it. So I've got to be little girl thought Plop wasn't a proper owl, and I'm explaining the why, because he didn't say to-wit-woo. So that's how we can build up these sentences. Let's try one more. Why did the little girl think dark was necessary? What would be the answer to this one? Remember, we're using our full sentences, so pause the video and see whether you can answer this one, and then we'll see one of my versions. And here you can see I've started, but I've not answered in a full sentence. I've used because at the beginning, so I'm telling you the why, because otherwise Father Christmas couldn't come, but I'm not telling you all that other key information. So the little girl thought dark was necessary because Father Christmas wouldn't come. And here you can see the sentence written out where I'm including each bit of the key information in the question. So I'm telling you the who, I'm telling you the what, I'm telling you the why. I'm giving you all that information. And looking at this question, we can see how I'm building it up. So what did the little girl give to Plop and why? Well, we know that he gave her one of the socks. But the answer hasn't been written in a full sentence and has some key information missing out. So we can make this better. The idea of the socks is really, really important. But we've missed out the why in this case as well. So we're missing out one second part of this question, which should be so that he would have a stocking to hang up for Father Christmas. So we've got one off our socks so that he can hang it up for Father Christmas, but then we're using that key information. So we've got the little girl gave Plop one of her socks so that he would have a stocking to hang up for Father Christmas. And this is how we're looking at it. So let's have a look at one final question and see whether you can help me improve my answer for this one. My question is, why did the young lady draw Plop's picture in the back of her sketchbook? And the answer I've created is because Plop was a night bird, and we know that this answer hasn't been written in a full sentence. So I'm asking you now to help me. Can you write a better answer that is clearer and more accurate? Pause the video, give that a go. Come and join me when you can share your answer with me. So does yours look anything like this? The young lady drew Plop in the back of her sketchbook because owls are night birds, and that's where she drew all the nocturnal animals. So have you explained what else was in the back of the book, and that's why Plop was drawn into that section? And have you actually included that key information from our sentence, the young lady drew Plop's picture in the back of her sketchbook because? So now I think it's time for us to go and put our knowledge into practice now, and I'll show our understanding of answering these comprehension questions in full sentences. So you will find the worksheet on the website as always. But just one last thing before you do fly off. Let's have a little look at this question and we'll come back to this in our next session. And I just want you to think about the chapters we've looked at so far and complete this sentence. So far I've most enjoyed the chapter Dark Is Because. So once you've answered your comprehension questions, come back to this question, come up with your answer and be ready to share it at the beginning of our next session. So good luck with your work, and I look forward to seeing how you get on with this one.